silence means yes. Okay, so welcome everybody, Community and Economic Development Committee, June 3rd, 21. Manny, can you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Weddleton?
Here.
Ms. Kennedy? I do see she's on. I don't know, maybe she's having some technical issues. Mr. Peterson?
Present.
Mr. Constant?
Here.
Mr. Dunbar?
I think he's excused.
Ms. Salatel? And then for non-committee members, Mr. Rivera? Mr. Perez-Verdia? Ms. Allard? Ms. LaFrance? Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. So, so we've got two items here, and I think the quickest would be this permit for raw shelled eggs. And I wonder if anyone minds reorganizing the agenda to put that first. I guess is Jeff Hickman here?
I am here.
Okay. Does that work? Or someone want to make that motion to reorganize the agenda?
Thank you. That would be great. This is Darcy Harris.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is Crystal Kennedy, co-chair of the Community and Economic Development Committee. And I see, looks like most of us are here, including co-chair John Weddleton, but he may be having some audio difficulties. So I'm going to jump in and get us started here.
Crystal, can you hear me?
Are you with us? Can you?
I'm here.
Here?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you, John.
I hear Crystal loud and clear. Can others hear Crystal?
I can hear Crystal and you, John.
But Crystal can't hear me?
Okay, I can hear you, John. I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, so we got started, assuming you were listening.
Sorry,
and
it was on my end. Thank you.
That's okay. So we did roll call and we have a quorum. Forrest is not here. It's on National Guard. And then what I wanted to do is reorganize and do this permit for the raw shelled eggs, because I think that's a fairly quick thing to just get a few comments on and then move on to the small area implementation plan.
Sounds good.
So, do we need a motion for that?
So moved.
Well, if we, second.
Any opposition? Okay, hearing none, let's go to 2B, the permit to sell raw shelled eggs. So Jeff, do you want to just outline what's going on here and why, and then we can just.
Well, in the recent past couple of years, we're starting to see more folks, with the farmers market movement and cottage foods and all that. People are wanting to sell their home, home farmed eggs. And we currently don't have a mechanism in the permitting structure of 1660 to allow us to do that in an inexpensive manner. So currently, the only way they can do it is to buy a seasonal type 1 temporary permit for $130 for the summer, which is a little ridiculous for just eggs. And so now that we're getting more people that are interested, and as soon as they find out what it takes to do it, they either don't do it or they do it illegally. So we're just trying to provide an easy to permit mechanism where we can still keep track of the eggs and make sure that they're safe, but not charge them a ton of money for that basic service selling eggs. So we're looking to just add a $25 egg only permit. That'd be the only thing they're selling. And you see this mostly at farmers markets where they just put eggs up on the table next to the produce and want to sell those eggs. So we just need to regulate those in some way and make sure what they're selling is safe. And so that's all this is, and it's a minimal cost to the person selling and minimal work for us to enforce it. So that's what we're looking at.
So it sounds like better service at a lower cost from government. Is that correct?
That's our intention, yes.
Let's make a note of that for people. Okay, any questions on this from committee?
I have a question, John.
Sure. Is that Crystal?
Thanks, Jeff. I think this is a great move. I mean, I know we've heard from the public in terms of how it is kind of, it defeats the purpose of having a market where you're selling your homegrown or your home laid eggs, when the cost of it is basically just prohibitive. And so I'm happy that we're doing this. I do have a question though, just in regard to, obviously there's a requirement that eggs have to be refrigerated at least, I think within 36 hours of being laid. And then if I remember correctly, I'm not looking at it directly right now, but I think there's a requirement too, in terms of they have to have been refrigerated a certain amount of time before they're actually at the market. So you're just asking people to verify that. Is there any kind of follow-up on that, or any kind of inspection, or how will that really be enforced? Thanks.
So through the chair, this is similar to the cottage food in regards of attesting to things. We can't go and inspect a farm in Wasilla. So there's no way that we could apply such a rule evenly to everybody if we wanted to do it where we were going to, go out and inspect a chicken operation. We just can't do it. We're retail food inspectors. We're not chicken inspectors. But basically, this does give us an avenue if there's a problem with the eggs, like we get a bunch of salmonella cases or something, and we can trace it back to that one producer at a farmer's market, then we would have the ability to coordinate with DEC or state agriculture, whoever needs to come out and do that inspection with us and verify how they're doing it. And if they're not, it would give us enforcement actions and ability to suspend or revoke a permit or to issue fines or whatever because they didn't follow the rules. So, but our intent is they're going to attest that they're doing this. But if we catch them not doing this, then that gives us the ability to have consequences for those actions. Because we just don't have the capability of inspecting farms in the valley or elsewhere in the state.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, in fact, you even answered my follow-on question. So great, thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other questions from committee?
I got one, John.
Pete, go ahead. I guess I should watch the chat here. Sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This is a very appetizing subject this morning. So I'm wondering, have we had problems with salmonella and eggs? I haven't heard of any.
Well, currently with store-bought eggs, the rules for eggs are pretty strict. But when you get to small chickens under 3,000 egg-laying hens, then the rules are the FDA exempts them. So we're just trying to make sure that they follow some sort of rules if they're going to retail sell their eggs. And so at market, and that's why we're having those that follow CFR for the 36 hours. And we haven't seen a problem with salmonella that we know of so far, but we're just trying to make sure that we don't have a problem. So it's a preventative measure.
All right, great. Thank you.
All right, and for record, Assemblymember Allard is here. And Dean, you had a question?
Hi, yes, sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had trouble finding my mic button to unmute. So yeah, Mr. Hickman, I was looking at this ordinance and it does reference the FDA model food code in the two of the new subsections. And so my question is just whether the ordinance here, the new section being added, 1660-107, does it do anything different? Does it modify at all some way the model food code from the FDA? Or why is it needed? Because we did adopt the 2013 model food code. So I just wondered if there was anything a little different from that that's in this ordinance.
Yeah, the main difference in the ordinance is it it requires the 36 hours of refrigerating the eggs within 36 hours of laying, because that is not an FDA code. That's in CFR, in federal code. And so we were going to put that in there. And then the other thing that setting this out in its own section does is make it easy for people to find it instead of having to dig through a different federal code to find the egg rules that are scattered around in several different sections. And it also moves the main definitions into the 1660 definitions and out of the federal code definitions. Because one of the first questions that was asked when we thought about this is, well, can I sell duck eggs? So, and by putting the definition into 1660, it makes it easy to answer that question if somebody wanted to look and find out.
Thanks, Mr. Hickman.
All right, thank you. Don't see anyone else in the queue. Any more comments from the committee? Anyone else in the audience there have something to add? I hear silence. So what do we do with this committee? I mean, we do marijuana, we recommend approval, but I don't know if we've done that with ordinances like this. Is that something we'd want to do? And I think actually, Jeff, to be clear, so you want this done quickly. So this would be on the addendum for tomorrow? You'd submit it?
I think that's what the plan would be. We're just looking for an endorsement since this is a community or an economic kind of thing to make it better and cheaper. We're just looking to do our public process through the committee and get your approval before and any comments or edits before we put it in front of the assembly.
Okay, well, what's your normal process for something like this? And do you have something in code that you would?
No, actually, usually when we're in front of you guys have made the changes and we're here to help. So like with the mobile Connex thing that we did there a year or two ago.
Yeah.
So
okay.
This is one of the first times since I've been at the meeting that we are initiating a minor code revision like this. So I'm not. We don't have a specific process that I know of.
Okay, well, that's fine. So thoughts from the committee members?
John?
Crystal, go ahead.
Thanks. I will move to put this ordinance on the addendum for tomorrow for the full body.
Second.
Do we want a recommendation or just let it roll like it is?
Well, I didn't specifically make a recommendation because I think we can obviously speak to it. I don't know that we need an actual recommendation, but I do think it's important to put it out there for everybody to have an opportunity to discuss and vote on. So that's why I made the motion I did.
Okay. Let me see, I guess, for comments on that. Dean, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. If I understood the wording of the motion correctly, it was that the committee moves to put this ordinance on the addendum. And my comment is about the sponsorship of this ordinance. In front of us at the top corner of the first page, it's sponsored by, prepared by the Anchorage Health Department, sponsored by the mayor, and submitted to the assembly by the mayor through the acting chair. So I think that the wording of the motion would be more in terms of the committee recommends, approval of this motion before the body, or the committee urges the mayor to put this on the addendum. And I just mentioned that because if the committee is sponsoring the ordinance, then and putting on the addendum themselves, that sort of alters the whole sponsorship dynamic, if you get my meaning. So if the committee is moving to put this on the addendum, I think that we would be adding the Community Economic Development Committee in the submitted by portion of this ordinance, and that's fine. If you wanted to do that, you're in a public meeting, you can have all the committee members add their names or the committee name being added as a sponsor, if that's what you're doing. Just wanted to clarify exactly what's happening here. Otherwise, maybe the committee is just asking the mayor to put this on the addendum.
Do you want to embellish, Crystal?
Maybe I just want to restate it. So how about I withdraw that one just to keep it all clean and smooth, and just recommend that the committee, well, move to recommend that the committee, sorry, move that the committee recommend this ordinance.
And I'll remove my first, second, and second this next motion. Thank you.
Okay, so any opposition to that from the committee? Okay, so this will be on the agenda tomorrow. Thank you, Jeff. And then we can just speak to the committee reviewing it and recommending approval when we hit it on Tuesday. Does that work? All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Well, let's roll on to the next item, which is 2A, 2021-46, with the small area implementation plan. And yeah, thanks, Jeff and Bonnie and others from Health Department. That was a nice little piece of work. So Michelle, you're here. Does someone have a presentation for us? We hadn't really coordinated on this.
This is Michelle. Yes, I'm here, and I have a brief presentation, and then I have my full team here to answer questions.
Okay, why don't you go ahead then? Do you have something to go on for us to look at, or?
Yeah, I just shared my screen. Can everybody see that?
Not yet.
Oh, I see. How about now?
Yes, it's loading. Yep, it's up.
Great, thank you. So this is through the chair. This is Michelle McNulty, the planning director. Dave Whitfield with current planning, Carol Wong with long range planning, and Carly Gettig, senior planner, are also here, as well as Chris Schutte, who's been working with us on this to answer your questions. So just high level, we want to kind of go over what is a SAPE. It's a development tool that can guide and implement land use changes for larger parcels and redevelopment sites. It's a missing tool that we don't have. So currently we have institutional master plans for sites that are 40 acres or more, and more for like your universities or hospital settings. This is really intended for smaller sites to be used by private landowners and public entities as well. It can be used to master plan parcels that are appropriate for revitalization to higher densities and mixed uses. And they really are meant to establish direction for site design and connectivity to transportation corridors while ensuring that our housing needs are met. And I just want to emphasize that this is a new tool that's for voluntary use and not a requirement. It's just one more tool in our toolbox. So this is really intended to provide flexibility for redevelopment, but while also remaining projects to remain consistent with our adopted plans and policies. It allows us to permit the establishment of custom or alternative site-specific designs and development standards. And it's also designed to allow kind of a single process when otherwise multiple entitlements would be required. So for instance, instead of having to do a rezone and a conditional use permit, this SAPE could be in a variance. This SAPE could be used in a lot of cases to kind of be that catch-all and streamline all those processes. So as I mentioned, we have the institutional master plan, which requires 40 acres or more. A SAPE is just that, it's a small area, and it's intended for one parcel that's 5 acres or more. It could also be a collection of parcels that equal 5 acres, and it can be either through a single owner or multiple owners. And if the SAPE or the area is within an adopted reinvestment focus area, it would only require a parcel greater than 1 acre. And so that's it for my overview. We did receive some questions and comments from Assemblyman Weddleton. I'm going to address 3 of them right now. I think the other were more clarifications, and then open it up for questions from the group. But one of the questions was why SAPE versus a PUD or planned unit development, or in Title 21, we have a zoning district called Planned Community Development. PUDs and PCDs are really intended for much larger sites. I mean, typically, well, code even requires that you have 30 acres. Both of those tools are also more focused on housing developments and typically require a homeowner association or code covenant and restrictions. And really the PUD and the PCD, while they do provide some flexibility, they don't provide the maximum amount of flexibility that has been built in with the SAPE. And the SAPE is also intended to be for housing development, but it might be for commercial districts as well. And so it really is appropriate to have its own separate tool outside of a PUD or PCD. There was also a question about the intent of the concept meeting. And the reason why we've added that for this, this tool is, and it's not required in any other of our entitlements, is because with the SAPE, there's so many different levels of what you could be using it for. It could be a very straightforward master plan, or it could be a very complex application that includes variants and other site design negotiations. And because of that, we want to have a concept meeting to find out what kind of SAPE an applicant is coming in with, so that we can, at that point, discuss what are going to be the appropriate materials. So for instance, a straightforward SAPE may only require concept level designs like a bubble diagram, whereas a SAPE coming in that has variances and is bringing on site specific uses that are different than the underlying zoning district, then we're going to want to see a much higher level of detail for ourselves and for the community to review. The other question was about the intent of the public hearing and whether the director was reviewing it to see whether a public hearing was required or if a new SAPE needed to be adopted. And that's, I think there was a mishap in what we actually wrote in the document. The intent is that would be an evaluation of whether it qualified for an administrative review versus going for a public hearing. So again, trying to build in a lot more flexibility and predictability with this process. So with that, I'm gonna save the rest of what I have of my voice and open it up for questions.
Yeah, way to hang in there. You sound rough. Thanks. So any questions from the committee? See, Dean, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. McNulty, I had a question on one part here. Does this really create a way for sort of a waiver or variance from the design and development standards from Title 21? I think that's Chapter 7 and Title 21. I guess I give that, and admittedly, I haven't really scrutinized the ordinance language itself, but in the PowerPoint, that bullet from the 3rd page, saying establishment of customer alternative site-specific design and development standards, does that mean sort of a variance or waiver from what's in Title 21?
Yes, Dean, that is correct. It would be a variance opportunity that would go through a public hearing, review.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dean. Crystal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm still kind of trying to grasp exactly from a practical standpoint what this does and how it's used. So it's not really a zone change, but it essentially would provide a plan or the ability to develop a plan without going through a potential variance process that otherwise might have to occur if someone were trying to do this in an area where it wasn't already zoned for. And you can clarify that, but I guess I'm looking at it from the perspective of down Eagle River Valley, we recently had one of the planned community development zoned areas that was rezoned into more of a just straightforward residential area. And so I'm kind of comparing potentially how this could have played into that, which to me was actually a zoning change, but you're telling me that this is not typically a zoning change. So I guess I just need some more understanding of what this really is and how practically it's applied or implemented. Thanks.
Great. I'll start, and probably my team will have a lot to add, but so yeah, like a PCD, you're actually rezoning. That functions more like an overlay district where you're creating a new zoning district. With the SAPE, you're not rezoning, so you could potentially have 3 parcels that had 3 different zoning, but it would give you the flexibility to still meet the intent of the underlying zoning districts, but in a more flexible way, because maybe you have some residential, but it's crossing over with the commercial, but the site design would be evaluated to make sure that the community benefit provided with that flexibility, that we're getting a great good of community benefit for allowing this flexibility, but not changing the underlying zoning districts. And yes, it would allow inherently through the process a variance, but that variance would still be required to go through a public hearing and be approved in a public hearing setting. So it doesn't give us the planning department or any other entity the administrative ability to approve those variances without a public process. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
Michelle, I would like to add just a little bit. I think what this ordinance
Right, I think
does.
that's Dave. Can you, when we speak, give our names?
My apologies,
thanks.
Mr. Middleton. Dave Whitfield, current planning manager. I think as Michelle mentioned, this ordinance is intended to provide maximum flexibility. A lot of times in development projects, we have multiple entitlement actions that are required to be met before a development project can happen. Well, this ordinance provides one-stop shopping, so to speak, wherein you can obtain variances and you can get approval of certain relief from design standards at one place. And I think it's a tool that's missing in our toolbox, and I think it's something that we should make available to the development community.
Any follow-up, Crystal?
Well, actually, it looks like Mr. Schutte raised his hand, so he might have a comment. And then, yes, after that, I do have.
Okay. Comments. All right, and to people, I'm watching the chat more than the raising the hands. So if you can get in the chat, so go ahead, Chris Schutte.
Yeah, thank you, Chris Schutte, Director of Economic and Community Development, and I'll just be brief to supplement what both Michelle and Dave have said. I also wanted to highlight that the applicability of a small area implementation plan can be a collection of properties. So for example, you could have multiple property owners that fall within an area work together on how they mutually will be improving a given area or redeveloping a given area, and band together under the tool that Michelle described, the small area implementation plan, in order to give them a little bit more regulatory and design flexibility that takes into account how each of those component properties or pieces actually work together as a collective whole. So it's a tool that provides just one more way of getting design and regulatory flexibility for developers, whether it's individual property owner developers or multiples. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Anyone? Dean?
John.
I'm sorry. No, Crystal, go ahead if you follow up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. No, that helps a lot. I appreciate all the explanation. But I do have two questions. One is whether or not the Chugach Eagle River Advisory Board has been given this document to review yet. And the other thing is, so potentially what's the downfall of this? What would be any reasons or rationale for any community developer pushback? Thanks.
I'm going to defer to, I think Carol, she might better know, or Dave, about if how the Chugach Eagle River Advisory Board, if they had a presentation or were otherwise directly consulted. As far as downsides, I don't personally see any, because it's like I said, it's a voluntary tool. No one's required to use it. And it's just one more tool that developers have that allow them more flexibility and negotiation with the department. And as Dave said, that one-stop shopping, I mean, that's what we hear all the time from applicants is, oh my gosh, I have to go to the planning board and get a plat, and then I have to go to the ZBA and get a variance, and then I have to go to planning and zoning and get my conditional use. So this really streamlines that process, but it also streamlines it and allows the full picture to be told. And I think that there's more value in that than looking at these requests on an individual basis. So in a lot of ways, I think it's better for both the community and the developer. And the only downside would be if the community felt, well, we don't get those, those 3 chances at community or public input. That being said, there's still the robust community council requirement, 30 days are going to the community council requirement, and then 45 days from when an application is submitted for people to review prior to a public hearing. So I guess I don't really see a lot of downside, and then I would turn to my team to see if anybody else thinks of something different.
This is Carol Wong, manager of the Long Range Planning Group. And I guess you could see it as a possible downside is that the ordinance as written right now before you is only applicable in the Anchorage Bowl area. Chugach, Turnagain Arm, and Gerwood are not part of this.
Okay, can I have clarification on that then? Because I saw something that did say that Eagle River was included. So, and I think that might have been in the AM possibly.
Maybe in that first page of your PowerPoint, Michelle.
Yeah, and I guess maybe that got taken out and I missed it. But Carol, I thought this just did not apply to Girdwood because they have their own tool for this.
I have the it's on page 2 under applicability. I hope I'm not, well, page 2 and lastly, the last lines of page 2, 26, 27.
No, Carol's correct. It's the flyer is incorrect. We need to change that. Thank you, Carol. We did end up, originally we had included Eagle River, but we must have taken that out. Thank you.
I think on page 3 of the document that was introduced on line 13, it says not applicable to Chugach, Eagle River, Turnagain Arm, or Girdwood.
Good.
Oh, there we
catch.
go. Dean posted that in the chat. Perfect, Dean. Thank you. Okay. Any
Okay,
more, Carol
thank you.
or Crystal?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Dean, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess I wondered, I'm sort of anticipating that maybe someone will want to make this applicable to Eagle River or Girdwood. What would it take for that to happen? Would it simply be altering the page 3, lines 13 language that we just talked about? Or would we need to add language to chapter 9 and the Girdwood Eagle River and the Girdwood chapter and the Eagle River chapter?
Dean, so Girdwood already has their own section for small area master planning. It's not called that, but they have their own tool. So it would likely not needed to be updated to include Girdwood. But if we wanted to amend this at a future time to include Eagle River, I'm going to turn to Dave for confirmation, but I believe we would only have to amend that line, clarifying that it was also eligible and applicable in Chugach Eagle River.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Dave Whitfield, current planning. I would say amend that line within this ordinance, and we may even want to add just a small line in chapter 10 that points back to chapter 3 for small area implementation plans. Thank you.
And then
All
I
right,
would just,
thanks.
oh, sorry, this is Michelle. I would just add one more thing, and it would require us to go, to the advisory commission or the consortium. We couldn't just, it wouldn't be a text change. It would be a similar process to what we're going through now.
Okay. Anything else, Dean?
And I'm sorry, this is Dean. I think I missed when Carol was talking about discussions with Eagle River. Did the Planning and Zoning Commission, though, in their review address this applicability, not including Eagle River? And what did they say about it, though?
It was noted for them, this is Carol again, it was noted for them that this ordinance as written would apply in the Anchorage Bowl. And so after that, they didn't have any questions about where else would it apply. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I actually had asked to make a question about something else, but I was following on the conversation. So, Mr. Chair, if I may ask something?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, thank you. And this is Dean. So, I'm understanding it's a tool that provides flexibility and so forth. Then I pulled up the summary of economic effects, and it sounds like that it would provide, I think, some cost savings and streamline the review process for certain area developments. And I do understand that planning's services are fee-based, so it would basically be saving developers on permitting and review fees and so forth. Is that right? And looking at the summary of economic effects, it says that the end and private sector effects, it's anticipated that on balance there will be savings to the private sector. It doesn't mention public sector economic effects unless the municipality initiates its own small area implementation plan. So basically, the efficiencies created are in possibly savings on permitting and review fees. Is that correct? And sort of a second question is, do we have an example? Maybe I think that would help give everybody a clearer idea of why this is such a good tool. Is there an example of a development, a recent one that went through everything, all the processes, that would have saved some money, that would have been more efficient if we had this tool back then?
Yeah, I'll speak to the first question about the fee. Yeah, with the efficiencies, yes, that's where they would save the money is, for every application you submit, even if it's the same project, there's a specific fee for conditional use permit, one for a variance, one for a rezone. So yeah, in that instance, the one SAPE fee would save the applicant those additional fees. And in addition to that, the public sector savings is that instead of having to have staff go in the evening to 3 different meetings, which can start to rack up overtime, and it's 3 different staff reports, it's a lot of additional mailings. We're only doing that one time, so we only have to send one grouping of this out to the community councils and to the reviewing agencies. We only have to, prepare one courier package to go to the applicable board, and we only have staff going to one meeting. I do want to clarify that in the future, if, as we are developing the reinvestment focus areas, one of the incentives of being in an RFA may be that the planning department completes a SAPE for the development. If that were to be the case, then we would need to make sure that we had money in our budget to cover that, because we would likely need to hire consultants. And that might be part of the incentive package for using both being in an RFA and as part of the SAPES. I'm sure Dave can give an example of a recent development that had to go through multiple applications. I'll speak real quickly just that we know that we have upcoming developments that very likely could use this tool. For instance, Cook Inlet Housing's Spenard East project at 36th and Arctic. They were able to do what they wanted to do under the current tools that we have, but as that whole area gets redeveloped with JJ Brooks, the Maggio trailer park, that might be a perfect example of an area that's ripe for a SAPE, and that would really benefit from the coordination of different property owners, consolidating a development to really have a cohesive plan. So we definitely see where future projects are going to benefit from this. And we've brought in the development community early on as we were developing this tool. And we've heard from them also that they see this being something they would use. And then Dave, I would ask you if you have any recent examples of one that would have benefited from this.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, I think what is a little bit problematic about development in this town is that oftentimes there are multiple entitlement actions that are required before somebody can do a development like this that incorporates variances and entitlement actions that would provide that flexibility wherein somebody could do mixed use. So what I've seen is this tool would have been a benefit in a number of different developments. However, in those developments, they've opted, because of the lack of flexibility, opted to do something more streamlined, something more traditional, wherein they could have used this flexibility to do a more creative development. So while I don't have a specific development where they've specifically said we want these tools, I know of developments that have just gone the easy route, wherein they could have used this tool to provide a much more flexible and creative development. As Michelle mentioned, there's a number of developments out there that I think would benefit from this tool. Several mixed-use developments, JJ Brooks, Cook Inlet Housing Authority's development. So we're kind of excited about this tool, and we think it's a good one. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Dave. Anything else, Dean? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mr.
Dean?
Chair. I apologize if I'm hammering away. that does sound great, and I don't mean to rain on the parade a little bit, but of course, from a legal perspective, I'm concerned about process, and I've just sort of gotten to skim the ordinance, and I see that two things I noted here. One is that there's not really discretion in the planning department director in terms of saying, you know, SAIP isn't a good tool to use for this development application. You should do it a different way. Instead, there's the language subsection F, page 7, line 30, for approval criteria is a small area implementation plan shall be approved if all the following criteria have been substantially met. So to me, that's just sort of, you don't have this question and then substantially met, makes it a little gray and fuzzy. But so I guess that's just a little concerning for a lawyer, I guess. But that doesn't mean it's such a bad thing. But I do wonder for the process then, if it looks like they're substantially met, notice question shall approve it. But then if suppose someone in the notice area, which I assume is going to be 500 feet of surrounding properties around the area, is that correct? For a plan that's approved, that they could appeal to from page 10, subsection G5, to the zoning board of examiners and appeals. And can you tell me if I'm correct, from the zoning board of examiners and appeals, that decision can further be appealed to the Board of Adjustment? Is that correct?
This is Michelle. I'm going to actually defer to Dave on that question about would it go from ZEBA to the Board of Adjustment. And then just to get back to your I think your original question about the standards and the substantially met language, you sound exactly like Quincy. She also so that is typical language that we use in all of our entitlements. It recognizes that it's oftentimes hard to be, you know, fully met. I mean, substantially met. I get what you're saying, but it is the language that we use in all of our applications, kind of recognizing that it's hard to say something is fully entirely met, and so it kind of gets to that it's substantially met. I'm sure that what I'm saying is not what a lawyer wants to hear, but it is common on how we have all of our other applications. And then yes, the mailer, it would follow our existing process and would be the 500 feet from the project area, so the outer boundary of the entire site. And then Dave, do you know if it would go to the Board of Adjustment after the Zoning Board of Appeal?
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Dave Whitfield, current planning manager. Typically speaking, decisions made by the Urban Design Commission or Planning and Zoning Commission would be appealed to the Board of Adjustment. Whereas with the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals, it's typically appealed directly to Superior Court. So in this case, because Urban Design Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission have authority, I believe it would go to the Board of Adjustment. Thank you.
Okay, Dean?
Yes. Well, not a question, but I would just respond about the substantially met language. And yes, Michelle, I get where you're coming from exactly. That changes the standard from something that's clearly objective to sort of somewhat subjective. But I think that really serves it really serves the planning function well, because every application is unique. So having purely objective standards can be difficult to get good applications processed and through. So I don't really have a bone of contention with the substantially met language. I think it just is fuzzy, and that just creates an area that would be litigated. That term will be part of a limiting appeal litigation. it was substantially met or not substantially met. It's a less difficult thing to decide. So that's all though. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dean. All right, anything else from the committee? I had a couple of questions. One is you touched on, I guess is my question number 10. Michelle, when you were speaking, is this something that you'll have rewording for? Well,
Yes, we can provide you with alternative language.
okay. And then there's a lot of discussion here on the various B1A uses. And I didn't go back to look at the B1A and so on, but why are we focusing on B1A?
Carol, do you want to touch on that?
Yes. So B1A, this is Carol, along with planning. B1A is our smallest, lowest commercial type uses, and they're meant to serve the surrounding neighborhood. And so we didn't want to pick uses specifically and put them in, but we wanted to allow the market to show us through the master plan, this small area master plan process, per their market analysis of a particular type of B1A commercial use that was found to be lacking or needed in the area. But to go to B3 would then introduce, a next category of uses, which would be very auto-oriented, and in these areas.
Yeah, I hope it's not me. I'm losing some of Carol. You're breaking up.
So we just felt that the B1A uses were more conducive to a neighborhood scale, fostering uses that would support a neighborhood residential mixed-use community versus the next category of commercial, which would be more auto-oriented, and we're trying to encourage walkability and other modes of non-motorized transportation use in these safe areas. Does that help?
Okay. So part of that. So how do you you have a provision there, so they would show that there's a market need for some use that they propose. How would they do that? And can you give us an example?
An example, it would be like in our UMed district plan, we are, the consultant did a analysis of walkability to a grocery store and found that for employees and students in the UMed area, they would have to walk or go 5 miles out or to be able to get to a grocery store. So we didn't want to name specifically a location, but we just noted in that plan that such a need was needed. And APU looked at it. They tried to find a location in their site, but the timing wasn't right. And then the TED site came up on Tudor and Elmore as a viable candidate. So I think that in the future, within a safe area, they may, in their market, say, the example you use may not be a full-blown grocery store, but they might say a small sundry store might be helpful to serve their development and the surrounding neighbors.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it's always a judgment. I mean, if they built this and put in a strip mall, then the various businesses that would rent there would kind of be making that decision. Is that right? Or do they need to specify what's going to be in this strip mall?
we still have to work with the underlying zoning, which in most instances will be a residential based zoning. So we will, the state needs to address how their project or development really focuses on housing first, and then the B1A uses are really supplementary to that and need to take a smaller portion of the overall development site.
This is
Okay.
Michelle.
So it's kind of like that. What do we call it? The B4? Is it R4? Michelle? Go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, I was just gonna maybe add, like, to your question about if there was a strip mall or some type of a multi-tenant building. Yeah, we would.
I'm losing lots of audio quality.
Okay, that could actually just be me. So on your strip mall question, I just wanted to clarify that, yeah, if we had a multi-tenant building, then yes, we would probably want them as part of that negotiation and that interaction between the developer and us. We would probably want them to identify what type of shops would be in there so that we could understand that, making that connection that Carol was talking about.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I think that's my main questions. I think the list I sent was mostly edits, and then you had your Exhibit B amendment. So are you? Maybe we should go through this a bit. I'm sorry, Chris. You're in the queue. Let me go to Chris and then Chris Schutte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I withdrew my request to be in the queue. Sorry.
Okay. I guess a couple of things. You have the amendment you propose in your Exhibit B, and then a few more. I guess that little comment on page 10. So a few other amendments, and then maybe a clarification on that. The appeal to ZEBA then may go to Board of Adjustment, and make sure that that's the case. And would that be an amendment? I guess I'm talking to either Chris Schutte or Michelle or Dave. And will you be preparing amendments?
We can probably.
I'll start. This is Chris Schutte, Director of Economic and Community Development, trying to save poor Michelle's voice. We're happy to work with you to develop amendments, and we can do that, I think, in advance of Tuesday.
Okay, because we just have a few, I think, from this meeting that may have come up. So, okay. So anything else on this from the committee? I don't hear anything. Does anyone else have comments on this? Okay, so I guess with the committee, we'll see this go forward and then work on some of the amendments on the items that came up today. And then I had a few edits, that fairly simple things that I emailed to Chris and Michelle. Any recommendations from the committee or comments? My audio is not perfect, so I'm pausing to make sure I'm not missing anything. So, okay, well, I think we are done with this item then. And with nothing else on the agenda, I guess ask for audience participation. Mandy, is there anyone waiting in the wings?
I have one phone number on ending in 9449, and that is all I see called in.
This is Eugene Carr Haberman. That's my number.
Okay, Eugene, would you like, go ahead?
Yeah, I'll be rather brief today. Okay, and thank you. Set my timer. My name is Eugene Carr Haberman. I follow the public process. When the public process is done appropriately, a decision made by the governing body is more likely in the public interest. The first document you had approved as a committee, and as you know, I do listen to your meetings. I don't recall hearing you asking for public comment before you went to the vote on that first item. You did some shuffling on the agenda, move items around, and that first item, that one, I didn't hear you ask for any public comment before you went to vote. Also, I can't help but notice is that you appear to be having some technical difficulties in hearing each other and so forth when you're, I guess it's on the Teams section and so forth. And I understand that one meeting that happened with the Assembly, I guess Wednesday, that meeting was ended quickly because of technical difficulty, of being able to hear. Yeah, I know I know you're trying to do your best, and I appreciate that, and the staff with the clerk's office and looking at these meetings. I do appreciate the fact that of all the committees, you appear to be more consistent in being able to put a team link for the public to be connected on that, as well as the audio, and I thank you for that. And that's the way to go. And last thing to close is that I'll close with this, and you've heard this more recently, more frequently. The Assembly chambers are for Assembly meetings, not to be placed anywhere else. Tonight, you're going to have a meeting on a work session and a town hall meeting over in Denina Center, but there's no way for the public to be able to be hooked up by phone. They have to be physically there, and we're still dealing with COVID there, and the arrangements that the clerk has provided and the city has provided at the Assembly chambers is much more appropriate for the public to be connected with you, and and vice versa. And I plead with you to stop these meetings that are happening in other places like City Hall and the Denina Center, and keep them in the Assembly chamber. Thank you very much. With all due respect, and take care. And with 31.
All right, thank you, Mr. Haberman. Any more comments from the community? Who was that, Pete?
I was just going to say move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any opposition? We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.